Hey guys, it's me, Joyce, your Career Chief of Staff. I am here today to just chat a little bit about two things. Number one, creating and owning your narrative, and also number two, burnout, how to identify it and how to eliminate it. So let's get right into it. So, as you all know, I've worked in both corporate and nonprofit sectors, and I think while there are some similarities, my particular focus will be on the corporate sector. In the beginning of my corporate career, I found myself very curious. I was wondering how my MBA and my nonprofit sector experience was going to play into my current role as a human capital specialist, primarily within employee relations at a top financial firm. Hi, I'm Joyce, your Career Chief of Staff. I spent the last 15 years ascending the ranks of corporate and nonprofit management. I discovered that the key to maximizing your corporate career lies at the intersection of strategic communication, authentic self-awareness, and organizational acumen. I'm here to address the hidden aspects of professional advancement and to empower you to become the CEO of your career. What I was very confident in is that I had people skills. I understood how people work and their needs, how to be self aware, and how I can flex multiple leadership traits to get the job done no matter the situation. I found that what I really needed, in addition to those skills, was the ability to be objective and to, at times, put my empathy to the side for the business need. And whether that was an operational need, whether that was a thing that had to be done, sometimes it didn't feel right, but I had to put my own feelings about the situation aside to get it done. And so I knew in that role, that was the muscle I needed to flex. Yes, I'm empathetic. Yes, I know myself. Yes, I know how to deal and interact with people. But in that role, I needed to be as objective as possible and use the data to drive decision making in that field. In the roles that followed, data actually became more and more important. Not only how to manipulate it, how to tell the story and report on it, and how to really use it to drive business decisions. It became very important that early in my career, I had to get a hold of using data to craft and tell a story. And as I was doing that, I realized it was important to craft and tell my own story about who I was as a leader, who I was as a colleague, and who I was with regard to whether or not I was promotable and could move up within the organization. Early in my career, my first few bosses in corporate really drove down the need to understand excellence. Excellence in how I presented my work, the thoroughness of it, the timeliness of it, error-free, so accuracy, how efficiently I got it done, what resources I used. And as I said, data was a big part of that. And so as I perfected that skill and moved up within the different organizations, people skills became more important as I started managing others. And so that empathy and leading with understanding, all of that came back into the forefront, but I kind of had to put it to the side while I learned these data-driven decision-making skills and the objectivity that came with that. So to the first point really is about owning your narrative and crafting it and telling your narrative. I made the mistake early in my career of thinking that my work was going to speak for itself. If I submitted good work, if I submitted it on time, worked with folks well enough that people would notice it and they would say, hey, Joyce, great job. I think you should consider this next project. Or, you know what, Joyce, I think you should be up for promotion. It did not happen that way. What I learned after the first few years is that you have to create your own narrative and then you have to tell that narrative. It's almost like you have to spoon feed people. Now, don't get me wrong, perception is reality. So if you're telling a narrative and then you are appearing to be or acting not in alignment, just completely different with that narrative, it's not going to work. It's going to look really silly. It's going to look manufactured. It will actually backfire. But if you can align how well you're working with others, the quality of your work, with how you show up, you can then spin that and tell it in a way that resonates with people and that will be memorable for them. So now in 2024, that looks a lot of different ways than when I was first starting out in corporate. Now it looks like creating thought leadership on platforms like LinkedIn, writing an article, publishing it on a thought piece, something that you feel strongly about, reposting someone else's article, and then commenting what insights you've gathered from it. Doing that consistently, that shows a publicly facing thought leader. And that shows that you're tapped in to the market and what's going on in the industry. Another way to do this is to be visible. Be visible, whether that's in your town hall, in your team meeting, requesting the ability to present at a senior leadership meeting, whether that is even your team offsite. Can you lead an exercise? Are you able to help plan an event and showcase your organizational skills? There are so many ways to be visible, and that just doesn't have to do with social media. It has to do with in-person, in real life, especially if you are in an in-person setting. That can also have to do with your one-on-ones with your manager. Those one-on-ones are not just check-ins to talk about, okay, what do I have to do this week? Okay, here's what I did. It's not a checklist. It's your way of showing, yes, you got the work done, but also, hey, I've been checking out what's going on in the landscape, and I just wanted to point out that here's what XYZ company did, this competitor. There's an acquisition that just happened. Here's how it might affect our business. Taking the time to visibly show your manager in those meetings that you are thinking strategically and beyond the day-to-day operations of what you've got going on. The point is visibility through social media, through meetings, through presentations, however you can do it, really helps you craft and own your narrative. Now, what are some scenarios where this can go wrong? What happens in any situation, not just corporate, but primarily for the sake of this conversation, we're going to talk about corporate, is that within your first 30, 60 days, people are forming their opinions of you. Are you on time? Are you appropriately dressed? Are you presenting yourself in the best possible manner? Are you collaborative? Is your work on time? All of these things are being watched. You may not feel it, but people are watching. Not just your managers and your superiors, but your peers and your subordinates as well. So it's important, especially in the beginning, to make sure you are bringing your best self. Not to say you're going to let it go after 30, 60, 90 days, but these are the days that are very critical to what opinions people form of you. And those opinions, guess what? They play right into the narrative that people will say, people will tell about you. Joyce is always on time. Joyce is reliable. Joyce can manage her time very well and submit her assignments early with enough time to start a new assignment. Joyce is collaborative. She's always helping her colleagues and mentoring them. So these are ideas that people will begin to form about you and will carry through all the way through the end of the year when it's time for performance evaluations and they're doing that 360 feedback. So what happens if that goes wrong? Someone somewhere got the wrong idea about you, or you made a mistake and people are starting to maybe question who you are as a professional, question your work product, question how effective you are at your job. Don't let it get to you. The biggest mistake, and I found myself doing this early in my career, so I'm speaking from experience. The biggest mistake that you can make is to allow those first rumblings of whatever it is to get the best of you. It can take a toll on your confidence. It can take a toll on your ideas of self-worth. It can even take a toll on whether you think you're right for the team or even the organization and cause you to self-sabotage. Self-sabotage by starting to mess up on all of your assignments, deciding, you know what, I can't handle this anymore, I should quit. Whatever it is, you want to make sure you maintain control of your feelings around whatever is going on. So if you start hearing, rumblings about, I don't think Joyce is ready for that next promotion. I don't think Joyce is ready to manage another colleague. Her skills are not quite there yet. Let that sit and start using your actions to counter that. Now, you might actually feel like no matter what I do, It will never be enough. That's a prevalent feeling I felt early in my career when I honestly felt like I was doing my very best and it wasn't enough. And that became very overwhelming. What I am advising you, again, based on experience, is to take a deep breath and know that your career is a long game. Okay? Whatever is happening with the narrative that may have been caused by somebody who said the wrong thing, or maybe even a mistake that you actually made, it is going to be a blip in the radar, a blip in this whole trajectory that you have that is your career, whether it's at this job or any job. So it's important for you to stand your ground and begin to course correct, whether that means now you need to come in early. Now you need to submit not just on time, you need to submit your assignments early. Maybe it means you need to not just be collaborative, but offer to lead an assignment, offer to be the first one to take a first stab at that draft. Overcompensate. Yes, and I know for some of us, we have been overcompensating our whole lives, and we're not going to get into the issues around, being a woman or being a person of color or being a person with a disability, like whatever it is. Sometimes you've been overcompensating for a long time and it's just like, oh, I don't want to have to prove myself anymore. Guess what? In corporate, it's a constant game of proving yourself, okay? That does not mean that you're proving your self-worth. You are worthy in yourself, okay? Just remember that. It's not your self-worth, but you are proving that you can manage others. You are proving I belong here, okay? At a certain point, you will have built enough goodwill and enough evidence that you will no longer have to prove so hard. But guess what? Even executives still have to prove this. So it's not just, oh my God, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm tired of proving myself. Guess what? You're going to always have to prove yourself, especially in corporate America. So get used to that feeling. It's not personal. It's just something that you have to do because it's a competitive environment. And if you're not used to that kind of environment, get used to it, because that's what it's going to take for you to succeed. And that doesn't mean a cutthroat competitive environment. It just means that when it's time to talk about promotions, when it's time to talk about who's going to lead on the next project, who's going to get that next international assignment, it is a competition and you have to prove yourself. And it has nothing to do with you proving that you are a worthy person. You're a worthy person just for being born. That's just how God made us. But are you worthy and up to the task? And try to separate that. Okay, that was a lot. So let's woosah. So again, briefly, we're crafting our narrative. We're making sure that our actions match our words, and that matches and aligns with the brand that we're building within the organization. We are being visible. We're asking questions in town halls. We are posting that LinkedIn article. We're reposting that thought leaders article, or putting in our own insightful comment underneath that. Okay, there's many ways to be visible. So we're doing all of that. Okay, now I really want to hone in on our second topic, which is burnout. Burnout happens in so many different ways, and I want to touch on briefly how I define burnout and the importance of identifying it and then tackling it head on. As you are crafting your narrative and putting in all this hard work, especially in your first 90 days on the job, sometimes you may overwork yourself, okay? You may overwork yourself to the point of exhaustion, emotional exhaustion, even physical exhaustion, to the point of even being sick, okay? It typically happens with high achievers, people pleasers, and I am a recovering people pleaser, so listen, no judgment here, but I want to use the lessons that I learned so that you don't have to make those same mistakes. A lot of these things that we do to try to be excellent, to try to prove that we are the right person for the job, etc., they can sometimes overtake us, and we may feel like it's time to stop. It's actually not we feeling like it's time to stop. It's our body telling us, you better stop or else. It's a threat. Your body threatens you, okay? And your body basically threatens to shut down on you because it's in overdrive, okay? It's fuming. So I want to identify 3 areas, which I'll dive into further in further videos. three areas of burnout that are important for us to acknowledge. One is internal. Internal burnout could mean that it's something that you can control. So, am I drinking water, eating well, sleeping well, exercising? Am I enforcing strong and healthy boundaries? Am I sabotaging myself, or am I actually driving myself towards success? All of these are internal ways that we can burn out if we're not doing these things well. The next set is collaborative. So that has to do with both you and your manager at work working together. If you are not communicating expectations, or if your manager isn't communicating expectations, if you are not explaining to your manager that you don't understand something and you're expecting them to just help you and read your mind, or vice versa, your manager is expecting you to read their mind. If your organization is not making clear what the values are and you're just unsure if you're acting in alignment with values or not, these are ways that you can collaboratively work with your manager or your organization to gain alignment and decrease the uncertainty and the confusion and the frustration that can lead to burnout. Okay, so that's the collaborative. The third set is external. Okay, external means your company, your boss, your manager, everybody outside of you. This is what you don't have control over. Okay, you don't have control over whether or not your manager plays favorites. You don't have control over whether you get recognized for your work. You don't have control over being overloaded with work, right? There are things that we do not have control over. And so there's a whole third set that we have to think about. So there's the internal, there's the collaborative, and then there's the external. And as we go through our careers, we are going to face burnout from any one of these three categories, a couple of them, or all of them at the same time. But it's important to diagnose whether it's internal, a collaborative issue, or an external issue. And that's going to guide how we tackle and face the problem. Once you have figured out where the root cause of the burnout is coming from, it's a lot easier to address it. So if you're feeling burnout, the exhaustion, the frustration, your body is giving out, you're sick all the time at work, you don't even want to go to work, you're not even wanting to wake up, maybe you're depressed. Like, if you're starting to feel those things and you recognize that there's a problem, you want to diagnose whether it's internal or not. That's the first step. If it's internal, you can fix it. You have control. You have complete control. If it's external, you have to muster up the courage to speak to your manager or whoever is relevant within your organization about that issue. If it's external, that's a whole other issue. Hopefully, it's not a toxic work environment, because that in itself is a monster that we can tackle in another video. But it will help you to resolve the problem by understanding where it's coming from. Okay, I am hopeful that by talking about crafting and owning your narrative, being visible and confident, and then really identifying burnout when it begins, when it's starting to seep in, all of these things will help you thrive in your career. They will help you with your own sense of control within your career. They will help you get a sense of just the lay of the land and how the organization works, how people function. You know, when there's that water cooler conversation, like so and so, she's always late or whatever it is, you're staying out of that. If you hear it about you, you're understanding, like, listen, these are organizations, this is how it works. We've been doing this since like 6th grade. It literally feels like middle school again, because once the gossip begins and the rumblings begin, that's when the narratives form. But it's up to us to really live our own truth, to be our very best, and to understand that we have the ownership and the agency to craft our story. I'm hoping that you found this helpful. If you have any questions about crafting your story, aligning your brand to your story, if there's a gap, I'm happy to chat with you. Also, if you have any questions about burnout, any difficult conversations you might need to have with your manager, if you're starting to get a sense of burnout being outside of your control, I'm also happy to have a conversation to help guide you through an exercise that will help diagnose and identify the issues. If you want to have a chat with me, go to careerchiefofstaff.com, set some time up on my calendar. I'm happy to chat. Take care.